My family forgot my birthday for 40 years, so I skipped their gala and read a speech that exposed every ugly truth they buried. Hey guys, so, this is one of those, am I being petty, or do I actually have a point? Situations. Every year, my 40th birthday was like this weird, low-budget rerun. Same script, same outcome, no one remembered. My family somehow managed to make a huge production out of every other event under the sun. Puppy birthdays, the day Dad reunited with his favorite fishing hat, don't ask, and now the upcoming grand retirement gala for my parents. But my birthday? Nada. Not even a text. So, there I was on the morning of my 40th, standing in my kitchen with Mittens, my cat, purring away on the couch. The house was dead silent. You'd think hitting the big 40 might warrant, I don't know, a card or something. But nope, nothing, just me and a pile of junk mail. Then, as if to twist the knife, the mail did deliver one thing of note, a thick, cream-colored envelope with shiny gold embossing. I opened it, and yep, it was exactly what I expected. An invitation to my parents' grand retirement gala. Seriously, they even capitalized the words, like it was some kind of royal coronation. The event was in a few weeks, but the timing of the invitation was what got me. It showed up on my actual birthday. If that doesn't sum up my place on the family priority list, I don't know what does. I sighed and put the invitation on the counter. It wasn't like I was surprised, but man, the timing really hit different this year. Maybe it was because 40 is supposed to feel like some kind of milestone. Or maybe I was just tired of the same old routine. Either way, the whole thing stung more than it should have. I didn't even have time to dwell on it though. Because right then, the front door slammed open, and in came Bailey, my daughter, like a whirlwind of books and tangled earbuds. She had that frazzled, end-of-semester look going on, half exhaustion, half caffeine-fueled panic. "Oh my God, Mom," she practically yelled, dropping her bag on the floor with a thud. "I just realized it's your birthday." Finals week totally scrambled my brain. "I'm so sorry." Before I could even say anything, she was bear-hugging me so hard I thought she might crack a rib. And okay, it wasn't like her remembering made up for everyone else forgetting. But it did help a little. Bailey had always been the one person in my life who genuinely tried. "It's fine," I said. Even though it wasn't really fine. I forced a smile, but she wasn't buying it. Her eyes zeroed in on the envelope sitting on the counter, like it had personally offended her. "What's that?" she asked, already suspicious. I shrugged. "Your grandparents' latest guilt trip. They're throwing themselves a big party." Bailey snatched it up and started reading, her voice dripping with sarcasm as she mocked the flowery tone. "Let us come together to celebrate this remarkable milestone in their lives, blah blah blah. Oh, and look, they want you to give a speech, again." She flipped the card onto the counter with more force than necessary and crossed her arms. "This is, what, the 30th time they've pulled this crap?" 29th, I corrected automatically. It was kind of sad that I'd kept count. Bailey frowned. "Mom, this is ridiculous. They remember every dumb little thing. Like, remember that year they threw Dad's coworker a surprise party because his parakeet got an appreciation event or whatever? But your birthday? Forget it." I snorted. It wasn't an appreciation event, it was for his parakeet, not his cat. "Same difference," she muttered. Then her expression shifted into something more determined. "You know what? We're not doing this. Let them call all they want. We're celebrating you today." Right on cue, my phone buzzed on the counter, lighting up with my mom's name. Bailey raised an eyebrow at me, daring me to answer it. "You should probably," I started, but she cut me off with a sharp look. "You know what? Just don't answer it. Let them wait for once." I hesitated. It felt weird ignoring a call from my mom, even though I knew exactly what it'd be about. She'd want to talk logistics for the gala, like whether I'd make the toast sentimental or funny or whatever. Same speech, different year, but Bailey grabbed my hand before I could overthink it. "Come on, Mom," she said, pulling me toward the door. "We're celebrating you today. They can wait." And honestly, for the first time ever, I didn't argue. I let the call go to voicemail, grabbed my coat, and followed Bailey out the door. We ended up at this little pancake diner downtown, the kind of place with sticky booths and servers who call you honorable. Bailey insisted I get the biggest stack on the menu, complete with whipped cream and sprinkles. "It's your birthday," she said. Like that was a valid excuse for rainbow-colored sugar at 10 in the morning. Over pancakes, we talked about everything and nothing. For a while, It was like the rest of the world didn't exist. But then, inevitably, my phone buzzed again. And again. My mom wasn't the type to let things go unanswered. Especially not when it came to events like the gala. I could practically hear her voice in my head. "Gabrielle, darling, we need to finalize the seating chart. Have you thought about your speech yet?" Bailey noticed the look on my face and reached across the table to grab my phone. "Mom, don't. Just for today, don't." She was right. Today wasn't about them. For once it was about me. So I put my phone on silent, finished my pancakes, and let myself enjoy the day. It wasn't perfect. It didn't magically erase 40 years of being forgotten. But for a few hours I felt seen, and honestly, that was more than enough. The day after my non-birthday, I walked into my home office and stopped dead in my tracks. Sitting right there on my desk was a glossy family tree display, the kind of thing you'd expect to see in a fancy genealogy exhibit at a museum, complete with gold frames and neat little branches labeled with names and dates. Clearly Mom's latest project. I didn't need to look too closely to know how this would go. Dad's weird second cousin twice removed, the one who collects antique belt buckles, had his own branch. My brother Colin's goldfish, yes, the one from 3rd grade, had somehow made the cut too. And me? I was off to the side, dangling like some half-forgotten twig they'd meant to prune. I picked it up and studied the meticulous labels. Karen and Charles, Mom and Dad, were proudly displayed at the top, golden and glowing. Then there was Colin and his wife Ashley, with their 2 kids. My sister Jenna and her husband Brad had their own section, complete with a little decorative sticker that said "Family is everything" in glittery font. Cute. And then, way off to the side, there was me, Gabriella. Gabby, no sticker, no additional branches, just me. Before I could stew in that too long, my phone buzzed on the desk. Of course. I took a breath and picked up. "Gabby, why weren't you at the planning meeting last night?" Mom started, without so much as a hello. I stared at the family tree in front of me. "Because I was celebrating my birthday," I said, keeping my tone as neutral as possible. There was a pause on her end. "Oh, was that yesterday?" "Yep," I said flatly, "same day it's been for the last 40 years. She cleared her throat, like she was trying to shift gears. "Well, you know how busy things get with the gala coming up. Anyway, speaking of which, I need to finalize the program. Have you thought about your speech yet?" Ah, there it was. Not "how was your birthday?" or "sorry we forgot," just straight into the gala plan of the century. "No," I said, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. "Haven't gotten around to it yet." "Well, don't leave it too long, dear," she replied, completely unfazed. "Everyone's counting on you. This is such an important milestone for your father and me. We want everything to be perfect." She launched into a full breakdown of the agenda, complete with the exact minute the cake would be rolled out, and I let her words blur into the background. My eyes kept drifting back to the family tree. My name was there, sure, but it felt more like an afterthought than an actual branch. By the time she finished talking, I'd barely heard half of it. "Sounds great, Mom. Got to go," I said, and hung up before she could start asking for speech drafts. A minute later, Bailey poked her head into the room. "You okay?" she asked. I gestured to the family tree with a humorless laugh. "Look what your grandma left me." She walked over and leaned in to get a closer look. "Wow, really leaning into the whole Gabby the solo branch vibe, huh?" "Apparently my life is too boring to warrant a glitter sticker," I said. Bailey smirked, but her eyes softened as she glanced between the tree and me. "Let me guess," she said, crossing her arms. "They want you to give a speech again, don't they?" "Bingo," I replied. 15 years straight. I think I'm their longest-running speaker at this point. She rolled her eyes so hard. "Mom, you're like their backup generator, only noticed when something important needs powering up." I snorted at that, but she wasn't done. "Seriously," she said, sitting down across from me. "Why do you keep letting them plug into you? You don't owe them this, you know." Her words hit me harder than I expected. She said it so simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. But the truth was, I'd never really thought about it like that before. I'd always just done what was expected. That's what families do, right? They step up. Except, apparently, stepping up only went one way in my family. I gave the speeches, I wrote the heartfelt messages in their anniversary cards, I edited Colin's graduate school essays, and helped Jenna plan her entire wedding. But when it came to my birthday, my life, My anything? Crickets. I looked at Bailey and sighed. I don't know, I guess it's just easier than fighting them about it. She shook her head. That's the thing, Mom. You shouldn't have to fight them to matter. They should just see you. The simplicity of that statement nearly broke me. I swallowed the lump forming in my throat and tried to play it off with a joke. Well, maybe I should start tap dancing at these events. That'd get their attention. Bailey smiled. Or, she said, standing up and grabbing her phone, you could just stop being their emotional power supply altogether. Let them figure out how to power their own gala for once. I chuckled, even though her words stirred something deep inside me. The thought of just not doing it felt both liberating and terrifying, but as I stared at that ridiculous family tree with its glittery stickers and glaring omissions, I couldn't help but wonder if maybe she was right. Maybe it was time to stop letting them plug into me. Then an idea hit me out of nowhere. If my family couldn't see me, then maybe I just had to make them. I closed my laptop, opened a blank document, and started typing. No outline, no plan. Just years of pent-up frustration pouring out of me. At first it was mostly venting. I wrote about the forgotten birthdays, the missed milestones, the endless speeches I'd given at their parties while they barely acknowledged I existed. But as I kept going, it started to take shape. It wasn't just a rant anymore. It was a story. My story. I don't even know how long I sat there typing, hours maybe. It wasn't until my hands started cramping that I finally leaned back and realized I had a rough draft of something that felt more real and honest than anything I'd ever written before. I didn't know what it was yet. A journal, a letter, maybe a memoir. But whatever it was, it felt like a start. The next day, I sent Bailey a text. Got a project I want to run by you. Bring snacks. When she showed up later that afternoon, I handed her my laptop. She plopped down on the couch and started scrolling through the document. At first she didn't say much, but I could see her expression shifting. Eyebrows furrowed, occasional murmurs of "oh my god" and "wow." When she finally finished, she set the laptop down and looked at me, like she was seeing me for the first time. "Mom," she said, her voice serious, "this is intense." "Too much?" I asked, suddenly second-guessing myself. "No," she said quickly. "Not too much. Just honest. Like, brutally honest. I love it." I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. "You think anyone else will?" Bailey grinned. "I think it's exactly what they need to hear, even if it makes them squirm." Her vote of confidence was all I needed, but I had to figure out what to do with it. I wasn't ready to share it with my family yet, not until I was sure it was polished and ready for the fallout. So I did what I do best. I kept writing. Over the next few weeks, that rough draft turned into a full-blown manuscript. Every time I thought I was finished, another memory would bubble up, and I'd dive back in to add more. I wrote about the year I made the honor roll, and Mom told me I shouldn't brag when I brought it up at dinner. I wrote about the time my brother threw a fit at a family barbecue, and somehow I ended up apologizing even though I hadn't done anything. I wrote about the Christmas they all went on a ski trip, and didn't realize they'd forgotten to book me a ticket until 2 days before. Each chapter felt like a little piece of myself coming back into focus. By then, I wasn't just the family speech giver or the backup generator or the overlooked daughter. I was a person who had a story worth telling. But, of course, my family didn't make it easy. "Gabby, we need to finalize the timeline for the gala," Mom said during one of her many calls. "Have you written your speech yet?" "I'm working on something," I said vaguely. I just didn't mention that the something was more of a book than a speech. "Well, don't wait too long," she said in that tone that made it clear waiting wasn't an option. "And remember, this is about celebrating us. Keep it light, keep it heartfelt. You're so good at that." I bit my tongue to keep from saying what I really wanted to say. Then there was Colin, who texted me one afternoon. "Mom's stressed. Can you just handle the speech stuff so she doesn't freak out?" Classic Colin, always pawning off emotional labor like it's a hot potato. I didn't even bother responding. And Lauren, of course, chimed in with her 2 cents. "If you need inspiration for the speech, I could send you some photos from their anniversary. They'd love if you mentioned that." What I wanted to say, "Yeah, Lauren," because nothing screams authentic like shoehorning a cruise story into a retirement gala speech. What I actually said, nothing. I let her text hang in the void, unanswered. Meanwhile, the manuscript was coming together in ways I hadn't expected. By the time I reached the final chapter, I realized it wasn't just a story about being forgotten. It was a story about finding my voice, a voice my family had spent decades ignoring. I sent the finished draft to a few close friends to get their thoughts, and the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Raw, one friend called it. Unapologetically honest, said another. Even my writing group, who were usually more interested in plot twists and pacing, agreed it was the best thing I'd ever written. And it wasn't long after that I started sending it out to publishers. I wasn't expecting much, maybe a polite rejection or two if I was lucky, but within a week I got my first bite. They sent me an email saying, "We're thrilled to express interest in your manuscript. Your story is powerful, and we believe it has the potential to resonate with a wide audience." I stared at the screen, barely able to process what I was reading. The book wasn't just an outlet anymore, it was real. And soon enough, my family was going to know just how real. By the time the gala was just a few days away, word of my book had somehow leaked to the family. I couldn't pinpoint how it happened. Maybe one of the friends I'd shared it with accidentally mentioned it to the wrong person, or maybe Bailey's enthusiasm got a little too loud around the wrong crowd. Either way, the secret was out, and the fallout hit like a tornado. It started with texts, at first subtle enough to be deniable. Colin sent, "Hey, heard you've been working on something big. Sounds exciting, let's catch up before the gala." Which, coming from Colin, was suspicious. He never caught up unless it involved dumping a problem on someone else. The rumors about my book must have been too juicy for Lauren to keep to herself, because she showed up at my house 2 days before the gala. She didn't call ahead, of course not. Instead, she let herself in, like it was still 1999 and we were living under the same roof. "Gabby," Lauren called out, her voice sharp enough to cut through my thoughts. I looked up from my laptop, where I was editing a particularly scathing paragraph. She appeared in my office doorway, all designer heels and perfectly styled hair. If she'd come to play the role of polished peacekeeper, she was right on brand. "We need to talk," she said, already sounding exasperated. I leaned back in my chair and gestured to the seat across from me. "By all means, let's talk." She didn't sit. Instead, she crossed her arms and stared me down, like I was a teenager caught sneaking out. "I've heard things, Gabby. Mom's heard things. Everyone's heard things. Is it true? Are you really going to air our family's dirty laundry in a book at the gala?" I closed my laptop slowly, taking my time. "First of all, it's not dirty laundry. It's my story. Second, the gala's timing is just a happy coincidence." She scoffed, finally sitting down but perching on the edge of the chair, like it might bite her. "You know what this is going to do, don't you? Mom is going to lose her mind. She's already stressed enough about the seating chart, and now she's worried you're going to humiliate her in front of everyone. Dad's colleagues, their friends, even the governor's wife might be there. Is that what you want? To ruin the entire evening?" I shrugged. "Not my intention, but if they're humiliated, maybe it's because they're seeing themselves clearly for the first time." Lauren's jaw tightened. "You're impossible. If you don't pull this book, rewrite it, or delay it, I'll have no choice but to tell Mom exactly what you're planning." Her words hung in the air, heavy with the same old family dynamic, control through guilt and threats. "Go ahead," I said, keeping my tone light. "Tell her. Maybe she'll get so worked up she'll forget we even had this conversation." Her eyes narrowed. "This isn't a joke, Gabby. No, it's not," I said, leaning forward. "It's my life. And for the first time, I'm not watering it down to make everyone else comfortable. So go ahead, Lauren. Do what you need to do. I'll be here, doing what I need to do." For a moment, it looked like she might argue, but then she just shook her head and stood. "You're going to regret this," she said, grabbing her purse. "Maybe," I replied, "but at least it'll be my regret, not someone else's." She left without another word. I sat there, staring at the empty doorway, wondering if Lauren would actually tell Mom. Maybe she would, maybe she wouldn't. Either way, it didn't matter. The book was happening. The gala was happening. And for once, I wasn't backing down. The day of the gala, I pulled up fashionably late. The event was already in full swing, and the banquet hall looked like something out of a lifestyle magazine. Twinkling fairy lights, elaborate centerpieces. And of course, the infamous family tree display, now lit up with tiny LED spotlights to give it an extra special touch. It all felt so over the top, so performative, like a set piece for the perfect family they wanted everyone to believe we were. This wasn't a coincidence. I'd planned my entrance down to the minute. They wanted me to show up early, blend into the crowd, and deliver another one of my carefully worded, heartfelt speeches. Not this time. Tonight, I wasn't here to play my assigned role. Tonight, I was here to be seen. The second I stepped through the doors, heads turned. A few relatives whispered to each other, eyes darting toward me like they'd been waiting for the other shoe to drop. I scanned the room until I spotted Mom, holding court by the family tree display. I approached her with measured steps, taking my time as I crossed the room. She noticed me almost immediately, and her smile tightened just enough for me to catch. "Gabriella," she said, waving me over. "So nice of you to join us. We were starting to think you weren't coming." "Oh, I wouldn't miss it," I replied smoothly. "After all, you've always counted on me to show up, haven't you?" Her expression flickered for a moment, but she recovered quickly. "Of course," she said. "Now, come meet some of your father's colleagues." I interrupted her by pulling a sleek, bound copy of my book from my bag and holding it out to her. "Actually, I brought you something. A little gift for the occasion." She took the book, her expression shifting from confusion to something closer to dread as she read the title, The Art of Invisibility. Her fingers tightened around the cover, and I could see the gears turning in her head. What is this?" she asked, her voice faltering. "My speech," I said, loud enough for the nearby guests to hear, well, the one I've been waiting to give for 40 years. The murmur around us grew louder. Mom looked around nervously, clearly trying to figure out how to defuse the situation. "Gabriella, this really isn't the time." "Actually," I interrupted again, "I think it's the perfect time. After all, this event is about celebrating legacy, right? What better way to honor that than by sharing a piece of mine?" Without waiting for her permission, I turned to face the crowd. "Good evening, everyone," I said, raising my voice to address the room. "I know most of you were expecting me to give a toast tonight, and don't worry, I brought one. It's just a little different than what you might be used to." I opened the book to the dedication page and began to read aloud. "To my family," I said, my voice steady despite the growing tension, "who taught me the true meaning of invisibility. This book is for everyone who has ever felt unseen, unheard, and unimportant. It's also for the people who made them feel that way, in the hope that they might finally understand." The room fell silent, almost suffocatingly so. I let the words hang in the air for a moment before continuing. "For years," I said, addressing the crowd now, "I've stood in this very role, giving speeches, writing heartfelt words, and propping up the illusion of the perfect family. But tonight, I'm breaking from tradition. Because the truth is, this family isn't perfect. Far from it." I turned back to Mom, who was frozen in place, clutching the book like it might explode. "Mom, you asked me to write a speech that celebrated our family's legacy, but the legacy I've experienced is one of being forgotten, sidelined, and treated like an afterthought." I gestured toward the family tree display behind her. "This tree is a perfect example. Look at it. Every branch meticulously labeled, every name celebrated, except mine. My branch? It's barely visible, just like my place in this family." Gasps rippled through the crowd. I spotted Colin and Lauren hovering near the back, their expressions a mix of shock and discomfort. Dad, ever the diplomat, was doing his best to avoid eye contact with anyone. "This book," I said, holding it up, "is my way of reclaiming my story. For years I let myself believe that my worth was tied to what I could give to this family, whether it was a speech, a helping hand, or just staying quiet to keep the peace. But not anymore." I stepped closer to Mom, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "You wanted a speech that would make people proud. Well, here it is. I hope you're proud of the legacy you've left behind." With that, I handed her the open book and stepped back. The crowd was still quiet, but the tension in the air was palpable. People exchanged glances, whispered to each other, and shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The silence was finally broken when one of Dad's colleagues, a man I vaguely recognized from a few holiday parties, cleared his throat and said, "Well, that was certainly unexpected." A few nervous chuckles followed, but the mood had shifted. The atmosphere was gone, replaced by something far heavier. Mom, still holding the book, looked like she might say something, but no words came out. Instead, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. As I stood there, watching the ripples of my actions spread through the room, I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't the dutiful daughter playing her part in someone else's story. I was finally writing my own. The gala turned into a moment for the family to confront the cracks they'd spent years ignoring, and whether they liked it or not, the tree was shaking, and it wasn't going to stop. But they were definitely not going to stay silent. The morning after the gala, I woke up to a phone buzzing like it had a personal vendetta against my peace. Text after text, missed call after missed call. Every notification was from someone in the family. The sheer volume alone told me they weren't reaching out to thank me for my thoughtful contribution to the evening. Bailey, still half asleep, saw my phone lighting up like a Christmas tree. "Guess they're awake," she said, smirking. "Barely," I replied, tossing the phone onto the counter and pouring my own coffee. Let them simmer. By lunchtime, the simmer had turned into a full boil. A loud knock rattled the front door, followed by my sister Lauren's unmistakable voice. "Gabriella, open the door. We need to talk." Bailey looked up from her phone. "And so it begins," she said, grinning as she grabbed a bag of popcorn and settled onto the couch, fully prepared to enjoy the show. I opened the door to find not just Lauren but Colin and Mom as well. Lauren pushed her way inside, like she owned the place, her heels clicking against the floor with purpose. Colin trailed behind her, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else, and Mom brought up the rear. "We need to talk," Lauren repeated, planting herself in the center of the living room. "Come in," I said sarcastically, shutting the door behind them. They didn't bother sitting. Lauren launched right in. "What the hell was that last night? You completely blindsided us." "You mean the part where I told the truth?" I replied, crossing my arms. Mom held up a hand, like a traffic cop. "Enough, Gabriella. This isn't funny. You embarrassed this family in front of everyone. Your father's colleagues, our friends. Do you have any idea how that made us look? Like a family that treats one of its members like she doesn't exist?" Bailey chimed in from the couch, munching on her popcorn. Mom shot her a glare but didn't respond. Colin, ever the peacekeeper, stepped forward. "Gabby, we get it, okay? You've got some grievances. And maybe we haven't always been as aware as we should have been, but doing this at Dad's gala? That was low." I laughed, shaking my head. "You think I'm the one who stooped low? Colin, I've spent 40 years being ignored by this family, and the one time I finally speak up, you're mad because I didn't do it in private? Guess what? Private doesn't work with this family. It just gets buried." Lauren groaned. "You could have come to us. You could have said, 'Hey, I've got some issues we need to talk about.' But no, you had to turn it into a spectacle." "Do you even hear yourselves?" I said. "I spent years being your speechwriter, your problem solver, your emotional punching bag. And the second I say something you don't like, I'm the bad guy?" Mom cut in. "Listen, we love you. We've always loved you. But this was cruel. You humiliated us." "Humiliated you?" I snapped. "Mom, do you even realize how many times you've humiliated me, how many birthdays you forgot? How many achievements you dismissed? You act like this family is some perfect legacy worth celebrating, but it's not, and you know why? Because you don't see the people in it. You don't see me." Lauren broke the silence, her voice quieter now. "So what happens next? You release the book and ruin everything? You destroy Dad's reputation? What good does that do anyone?" "This isn't about ruining anything," I said, my voice steady. "It's about telling the truth. And if the truth ruins your perfect little image, maybe it wasn't that perfect to begin with." Mom stepped forward, her expression unreadable. "If you go through with this, don't expect to be welcomed back into this family. And don't expect to see a dime of your inheritance." I laughed, shaking my head. "If being part of this family means erasing myself to make you comfortable, I don't want it. Keep your inheritance. I'd rather have my dignity." Mom's lips tightened even further, and for a moment, I thought she might say something else. But instead, she turned and walked out the door without another word. Colin followed, and Lauren hesitated just long enough to shoot me a look that was equal parts frustration and disappointment before leaving too. As the door slammed shut, Bailey let out a low whistle from the couch. "You okay?" she asked. "Honestly?" I said. "Yeah. For the first time in a long time, I think I am." I felt lighter after the family meeting, like a weight had finally been lifted. For years, I'd carried the burden of keeping the peace, of biting my tongue and playing the role they needed me to play. But that morning, as I watched them walk out of my house, I realized I didn't need to carry it anymore. their anger, their disappointment, their attempts to guilt me into submission. It wasn't mine to hold. It never had been. The next few days were quieter than I'd expected, though not without their challenges. My phone continued to buzz with messages and missed calls, mostly from Lauren and Colin. They were still trying to negotiate, to convince me that delaying or rewriting the book would somehow fix everything. But I knew better. Their solutions weren't about repairing relationships or addressing the issues I'd raised. They were about damage control, about maintaining the facade they'd worked so hard to build. I ignored their messages and focused on what mattered. The book. My publisher was ecstatic, updating me regularly on the marketing campaign and the growing buzz around the release. Advance reviews were pouring in, and the response was overwhelmingly positive. Words like unflinching and powerful appeared again and again. Each time, they felt like a validation of everything I'd poured into those pages. There were moments when doubt crept in, of course. I'd sometimes wonder if I'd done the right thing. That last family meeting had made it clear that I'd crossed a line they weren't willing to forgive. Mom's ultimatum about being cut off from the family and the inheritance lingered in my mind. Not because I cared about the money, but because it confirmed what I'd always suspected. My value to them was conditional. As long as I played my part, I was included. The moment I stepped out of line, I was expendable. But even in those moments of doubt, I knew I couldn't go back. The book was more than just a collection of stories. It was my voice, my truth, and my way of reclaiming the identity they'd spent years erasing. The morning of the release, my phone lit up with notifications. The book was officially out, and the world was already responding. Social media was buzzing with posts from early readers, and friends and colleagues flooded my inbox with congratulatory messages. Some of the most meaningful comments came from people I didn't even know, strangers who shared their own stories of feeling invisible, of being overlooked by the people who were supposed to love them most. Their words reminded me why I'd written the book in the first place. It wasn't just for me, it was for anyone who'd ever felt unseen. Among the flood of notifications, one message stood out. It was from Dad, short and to the point. It simply read, "I read the book. Call me when you have time." I was unsure how to respond. Dad had always been the quiet one, content to let Mom run the show. He rarely got involved in family conflict, and when he did, it was usually to smooth things over without taking a side. The fact that he'd read the book and wanted to talk about it was unexpected. I spent the rest of the morning preparing myself for the conversation. I didn't know what he was going to say, but I wasn't afraid of it anymore. The family had made their stance clear, and I'd made mine. There was no going back, no undoing what had already been done, and that was okay. For the first time in years, I felt like I was standing on solid ground I'd built for myself, without their approval or permission. Later that afternoon, I sat down with my phone in hand, ready to make the call. Whatever Dad had to say, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to apologize for choosing myself. I wasn't going to apologize for finally stepping out of their shadow and into my own. This was my story, and I wasn't going to let anyone take it away from me. So, tell me guys, what do you think? Did I overreact?